Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to CarrieLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
$14.90 WGCH. This is Carrie Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. If you're worried about change and the effect that it's going to have on you and your family, my next guest, Robert Ian, is an expert in conquering change. Robert, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Carrie. Good to be here.
It's always great to have you on. We were talking about illusions and the media, basically people just becoming desensitized. What's your take on the latest job picture, the job numbers, unemployment, and the state of the economy?
Oh boy, 3 very big subjects. We'll tackle them all. I think that there is definitely a lot of illusion. You use the word desensitized. I think in general, most everyone is desensitized to the numbers that are coming out. We hear such a fanfare when the jobs numbers, the unemployment numbers, the non-farm payrolls, pick whatever category. I mean, people's eyes glaze over when they hear this. We're told that 1 or 2 tenths of a percentage point on unemployment numbers is a big deal. It's really not. I mean, in my view, there's 2 unemployment numbers, 0 and 100%. If you have a job, the unemployment rate is 0, and if you don't, it's 100%. Everything else is a moot academic point. But when we get up to those 8-9% numbers of the U3, I mean, remember, there's always the U6 that the government, those are actual government statistics as well. They never report those, but they're on average about double what the reported unemployment number is. And then there's all those people that have just fallen off and aren't looking. So when you run those numbers, I think you get much closer to 1 in 5 Americans of working age that are either not employed or aren't making enough, being underemployed to support their households. I think it's still very dire. They paint the picture that it's good news when it comes out. But if there's all these, supposed jobs that people are having, what I want to know is, where are the testimonials from these people who are getting jobs and, buying a new car or picking up an undervalued home? You're not seeing those testimonials. If they had even 1 or 2 of those, they'd be plastered all over the media. I think it's mostly a psychological construct that's going on now to fool and convince people that we're living in a reality that is much better than it really is.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they feel just can't handle the truth. And by letting out all these statistics, by manipulating the media, they deliberately go out and numb people to the reality, which is, I think you'll agree, that the country's in a depression. There is there's no job creation going on out there in a meaningful way on a large scale. And in fact, if you look at percent of working population that's actually employed, it's at an all-time low. And that, to me, is the ultimate indicator that things are not the way they're claiming they are.
Well, exactly. And I think it's very, disingenuous. It's also it's psychologically damaging to people when they hear on the news all the time that things are good and rebounding and we're in a, quote, recovering economy. The media is playing to that 70 or 80% of the population that still does have a job. But that 20% that's unemployed or underemployed is really kind of left out. They're wondering what world they're living in when they hear those reports on the TV and radio that don't match the reality that they get up with every day. So I think at a core level, that's where we're seeing some of this outrage. We're seeing a lot of these different movements that are happening. I think it's that unacknowledged stress that so many people are under, and and they're looking for an outlet for it. And, I'm hoping it ends up being a positive, productive outlet instead of anything that approaches what some people have predicted with social unrest or violence or things like that. Nobody wants anything like that. We've got to have positive, productive channels to route this, unaddressed stress into.
Yeah, and you're right about that. But there's tent cities popping up around the country. The Occupy Wall Street movement, whoever or however it was spawned, it really highlighted that these kids have taken on six-figure college debt,
yes,
student loans. They can't find jobs. I mean, I read about one guy, he had a job and he decided to leave it and go back to grad school to pursue his lifelong dream of puppetry. Now, I'm all for pursuing dreams, but assume that your dream has to be a little practical. He gets his master's in puppetry, graduates, and then guess what? Nobody's hiring puppeteers other than the guys who are really running Washington. Puppeteers, there's not much demand for. And those guys, right, the Occupy crowd, they know something's wrong, and they think that big government, more big government, we don't have enough. We need more. They need to be taking more out of everybody's pay, out of everybody's income, and somehow that's going to make things work. They're definitely off base there.
Well, yeah, I mean, you hit on a real important challenge that is something that hasn't been talked about a lot publicly. We've spent a lot of time since '08 talking about the people who are 50 and up, who are being downsized and out of jobs early, and then because of age discrimination or, kind of a bias against older workers in this economy, they're just not getting hired. And so we've got those individuals in their 50s that have been challenged. But we've also got this whole other subsection that really hasn't had much of a voice, and that is the younger people who are out of college, as you say, with six-figure debts, and there aren't jobs for them. They're competing with those that are in their 50s that are out of work. So we've got, unfortunately, this potentially almost a class warfare situation being set up where we've got, young workers who want to get started being pitted against the older workers who are trying to either hold on to a job or find a replacement job. It's a very challenging dynamic. If you go back to the 1990s when, they claimed we had a new economy, when the high-tech sector was on a rampage, and, we were shipping a lot of our jobs, manufacturing jobs out of America. The argument at that time was, but we're replacing those jobs with this new industry, high-tech. And I mean, you could take that argument either way, but there were new jobs at that time. Now we're in a situation that is completely different from the 90s in that we're losing jobs and there are no new industries or jobs or technologies to replace them. We've got this vacuum there, and that vacuum is contributing to a lot of this underlying stress that's out there, both with people and in the markets themselves.
Yeah, and it's real interesting, the whole outsourcing thing. I think jobs did get created, but there's also a wealth effect involved when you create goods for sale and you add value to them, and there's skill sets involved. We've lost a lot of that, and now we're looking at people. They believe their key to the good life is a government job, a lot of them, and it just doesn't work that way. And the other thing, the job numbers showed an increase of 200,000 jobs for December, and I said probably 30,000 of them were seasonal Santas, and I don't see seasonal Santas creating a heck of a lot of value or wealth for society as a whole,
Exactly. Unfortunately, when these numbers come out, there aren't the appropriate caveats or disclaimers that say, but probably a good portion of these are the seasonal jobs, and then to define what they are. Again, those statistics come out, and I think they're playing to the 70 or 80% of the people that still have jobs to kind of fool them into thinking that, well, everything must be okay, or they would say something about it on the media. Well, no, they wouldn't, and they haven't time and time again. So there you go.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that leads us to the next thing. If you're still at an age where you can be retrained, people need to be looking at where the shortages are. Skilled trades like auto mechanic, like airplane mechanic, things like that, where they can still get training. Sometimes there's unions keeping them out, but sometimes there's such a shortage of those positions. Go to North Dakota. There are tons and tons of jobs in North Dakota, high-paying jobs in the petroleum industry that are going unfilled. They don't have an unemployment rate in North Dakota, and there's other industries just like that. You might not be in the best location, might not be where you really wanted to wind up, but if it comes down to having a job or not having a job, sometimes you have to be mobile,
Well, yes. And, I think you hit on a really important societal change, another one that hasn't been talked about to the extent that it should, and that is mobility. When I was growing up, it was still in an era, or the tail end of an era, where a person would go to work for a company or a factory, work there for 20 or 30 years, and retire. They would live in the same house with a 30-year mortgage that they would pay off, and that was the paradigm. Well, then in the marketplace, it changed where in the 90s, where, the statistics showed that people would change jobs throughout their career, depending on which number, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, depending on the industry. So people were going to be more mobile for, periods of, 5 to 7 to 10 years at a time, and then likely, based on the demographics, would relocate somewhere. Well, I don't think the full effect of that has really caught up with people. We're still in a real estate situation where we have people who are geographical prisoners to their homes that are underwater. That fact alone is contributing to the lack of mobility that people have now. Some people can't or won't move to where the jobs are because they have this big ball and chain around their leg called a house. And there aren't jobs where that house is located, and it's a dynamic that's affecting people across the country, across all economic strata, and this is something that just hasn't been addressed. You talk about people retraining and retooling themselves. I'm a huge believer in that. The market can be great at times, but long-term, the best investment in yourself or the best results come from investing in yourself. And those are assets and skills that can never be taken away from you. So I think that people really have to adopt the lifelong learning model and realize that is the change that they have to become accustomed to. So find a skill or build on the skills that you have. Get excited about something. It's good to work in an industry or at a job where you really enjoy what you're doing. Look at this time of change as an opportunity, to really do something or learn a skill that you maybe only entertained learning in high school or a trade and then kind of, walked away from it. Those are the kinds of questions people need to be asking themselves, and they have to be prepared to think mobile. And also, a place no one has really gone yet is to think global, and the possibility of maybe not only moving within the U.S., but maybe working abroad for a period of time as well, going to where the jobs actually are. These are the survival skills that people are going to need to adopt as we move through what's going to continue to be a very rapidly changing economy. It's a real it's a real potpourri of options at this moment.
Yeah, definitely. I've encouraged my younger kids, said, geology is like a great thing. There's not enough of them. The trend, again, is that wealth is going to be dug out of the ground, not created with a keystroke off a computer. So think about geology. What's wrong with that? They're going to need them. There's a shortage of them, and it's a ticket to like a real adventure. But of course, my kids don't listen to me. But hopefully, the one thing they will pick up is that you need marketable skills, and I don't mean marketable from the standpoint that you'll be able to get a job. Marketable from the standpoint that if you want to go into your own business, you'll be in a position to generate income from skills that you've acquired. And that's where I think it's really at is, hey, find your passion. That's always a plus, but you got to be practical as well. If you can do both, that's really great. And everybody wishes you the best on that. But at the very least, have an insurance policy, have something you can fall back on. Like, I never really wanted to practice law. It was the furthest thing from my mind. But I was involved in a printing business, and I felt that the type of printing we did was always at the risk of becoming technologically obsolescent, which it's getting closer and closer to. But I was probably about 15 years ahead. But I said, I'll go to law school, I'll learn a trade. And it totally served me well. It worked out exactly the way I had hoped. And everybody should have that career insurance policy so that if they do get to the end of the career road, then at least they'll be able to fall back on something and provide something of value, which is crucial to the human spirit and to everything that we strive for as people. Is you got to feel you're useful and providing something that people want. Otherwise, you wind up in dire straits,
Exactly. And it's really about maintaining, a competitive mindset. I mean, it's a very painful period out there right now for a lot of people. You listen to the national news, but then where I live, you listen to the local news at the holiday time, and the charitable organizations were being maxed out. The demand at the food pantries and the where meals are available was just overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot of people in silent need out there right now, and there's still a class warfare mindset going on against those people. The people that are hurting are average, ordinary people. It's not that pool of people has grown significantly over the last 3.5 years of people that are out of work, and I think it's critical, to keep an open space in your mind and your heart for those people. Because and to help in any way that you can. Give to the Salvation Army, give to Goodwill. If you've got things that are just sitting around, don't just wait and do it at the holidays. Give back in either a little or a lot, depending on what's comfortable for you. Because what may just seem like something taking up space in your home or your garage or wherever may be something that someone else needs right now to help get them through this time. So, I think it's important to, I believe the best charity is that which is private. And I think the best charity is where you help someone directly. There's no administrative costs. There's no organizations to manage it. You'd be surprised what $200 or $300 can do for someone. It can actually save a person's life. I know that from personal experience. And this is a time, this isn't over. People think we're, quote, coming out of it. I mean, the where we're going economically, and all the things that have to get worked out, the derivatives, the overhang in the real estate that's out there, the job situation. I mean, we can roll a pretty big snowball fall pretty quickly by stacking these situations one on top of the other. And this ride isn't anywhere close to being over. Some of the people that were affected early on in 08, 09, have been dragged through the mud, have kind of shaken themselves off. Some of those people have regrouped, but there's a whole lot of people right now that are being pulled into this economic vortex for the first time. I mean, and we've got a lot of, employees that work for the state and federal governments. There's downsizing going on there now. Many cross sections of those working populations are being impacted now with what many people were impacted with at the beginning of the economic crisis. So different segments of the population are going through this in different phases, and it's going to be a challenge. This is by nowhere over, in my opinion.
Yeah, with you there, and everybody needs to be helping anyone they can. You can't save the world, but you can help a few people around you, and it can make, like you said, all the difference. And Robert, where do we find you? Where's your website again? Oh, it's conquerchange.com. And you had mentioned last time when we talked about some of my commentaries with Chris at Goldseek, by a lot of popular demand and requests from listeners there, I've actually put on my website, conquerchange.com, all of my commentaries on the economy for all of 2011. And they're short. They're about 5 minutes each. So people can go and listen to those, download them. And then over the next couple of months, we're going to get all of my archives back on to 2007. And what's kind of neat is that if you listen to those in little increments, it basically guides you through the entire economic collapse, even before it started to happen. And because it reflects on a lot of the issues of the day. So it's a pretty neat chronology of stuff. So I was glad to finally get that updated for people. That's so great. That's really a great thing. I highly recommend go to conquerchange.com, listen to those, you start from the latest one and go back a year. It's not a lot of time, and there's a lot of good messages there and a lot of good advice that if people had followed to this point, they'd probably be a bit better off than they are now. So
I appreciate your kind words. Thanks, Gary.
Hey, well, it's from personal experience. You're one of my guides in this new career, this new adventure I've undertaken. We'll hopefully have you back a lot sooner. It's been way too long. Robert, be well.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you.